Good. Hello. Good evening, everybody. It's great to have you be joining us with us this evening for our fall lecture series of the Desert Laboratory on Tumamoc Hill on the Santa Cruz River. My name is Ben Wilder, Director of the Desert Laboratory. It's really great to be able to connect with so many more of you than we would have otherwise in more normal times. So kind of constantly have to look for the silver linings these days. So I really hope that you all are well and managing as best as you possibly can during these odd times. I want to also take just a quick pause before we get going tonight and just pay honor and remembrance of a dear friend of the Sonoran Desert ecology community, Phil Rosen, who left us far too soon in these recent days. Phil was a herpetologist, incredible naturalist, and really all-around desert rat. And many of his efforts on the west branch of the Santa Cruz River really helped continue to, as I was talking with Michael Bogan earlier this week, help give us hope about that life can return if we give it a chance. So I just want to recognize Phil and all he's given us and how much he will be missed. You know, the focus of this lecture series is the Santa Cruz River, which has been the lifeblood of Tucson. It is the reason Tumamoc Hill has a cultural history going back thousands of years and why this land is first and foremost O'odham land. But the river that we see today is an entrenched shadow of its former self. I'm born and raised in Tucson here on the west side, and I grew up crossing over the river pretty much every day of the first 20 years of my life, and learned to see her as a deeply incised channel that only flowed after the strongest of rains, which was an event to marvel at. But I also grew up kind of grasping at straws when we referred to the Santa Cruz as a river to out-of-town guests when they had that puzzled look on their face. But I'll never forget the first time when I saw a photo of what the river looked like 100 years ago, and can still stare at those images for hours. That visible surface flow, that gallery forest of cottonwoods and willows, and the Mesquite Bosque. Today, there's a lot happening with our river, especially right in the heart of Tucson, where Tucson, Black Base, the volcanic rock of A Mountain, Sentinel Peak, and Tumamoc Hill, have lifted up the aquifer for ages. And this is the part of the river that's also referred to as the Heritage Reach, and what we're going to be focusing on primarily within the larger context of the Santa Cruz River. Efforts to bring back water into the river are underway and have already begun. Efforts to reorient the future of our city back to the river are afoot and in conversations among many of us. But it is not easy, nor is it as easy as one would hope. And that what is possible within these aspirations is really not clear. So this lecture series is focused on better educating all of us so we can make a brighter future for our city and its sustaining elements, water and the river. So just one kind of housekeeping note that if you have questions during or after the presentation, just please put them into the question and answer box, and then we'll be monitoring those and we'll answer as many as we possibly can at the end of the formal presentation during the question and answer period. So we could not be more fortunate than to have Julie Pierson and Gabriel Vega of the San Xavier Wak District of the O'odham Nation to be our first speakers. Julie Ramon Pierson is a member of the San Xavier Wak community. She was born and raised at San Xavier, graduated from Sunnyside High School, and attended the University of Arizona. She served on the San Xavier District Council, the San Xavier Alatis Association Board, which is essentially the landowners board, which the co-op leases their land from, and is a longtime member of the San Xavier Cooperative Association Board. She currently serves as president of the cooperative board. Julie, I'm very impressed you've been able to serve on so many boards, and you have the patience for them still. She also participated in negotiations for the Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act, or SWARSA amendment of 2004, which she'll be speaking to us about as well. After Julie speaks, we are also fortunate to hear from Gabriel Vega, who is the farm manager of the San Javier Co-op Farm. He was born and raised in the Sonoran Desert and graduated from South Point Catholic High School and the University of Arizona with a BS in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. All right, EEB. His first love with the flora relatives was as a child alongside his grandmother in her garden. As an educator and farmer, he's focused on food sovereignty, food justice issues, providing communities access to healthy foods. Such important work right now. Gabriel also sits on the board of directors for the UNESCO City of Gastronomy of Tucson. So without further ado, let's get into the content of our, let's get this lecture series going. And Julie, please, you know, we'd love to hear from you, and you please begin and kick us off. So we're gonna bring up her presentation and welcome everybody again.
I just, yeah, I guess they go here. Start video, okay, I know.
I think you're unmuted, Julie, but you can turn your video on.
I did, and
There we are. And then just unmute yourself. Almost. No, we still can't hear you.
okay.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
All right, we're in business. Take it
All
away.
Start, okay. As Mr. Wilder said, my name is Julie Pierson, and I just wanted to give, first of all, a background on the
Julie, you accidentally muted yourself again. Sorry to interrupt.
I don't.
Oh, one more time. There you go. Okay, now take you. Oh, no. One more time. Just press that unmute button. All right, there we are.
I don't know, keep going. All right, okay. Start all over again. This is the first time I've done this stuff. I mean, I've been on Zoom, but usually. Start video, okay. Yep, start video? Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, all right. Okay, to begin with, we're going to talk about the autumn reservations. There are 3 autumn reservations. We have Santa Vera, we have Gila Bend by the town of Gila Bend, and the main Sal's Reservation. And the land acreage at Santa Vera is 71,000 acres. And it was established by executive order in 1874. Gila Bend in 1882, and the main reservation in 1917. The total acreage for the 3 reservations is 2.8 million acres. And the latest addition to that was Florence Village, established in 1978, and consists of 72 acres, and it is by the town of Florence. There were 3 groups of autumn: the riverine people, the 2 village people, and the hunters and gatherers. The Walk autumn, or the Santa Vera people, were a riverine people who traditionally farmed with water from the river, as did their ancestors, the Hohokam. And the autumn name for Santa Vera is Walk, which means goes in, and refers to the stream that flowed in the river in earlier times. The stream flowed north and then went back into the river. That's why it's called Walk. And today the river is known as the Santa Cruz River. And as we all know, you know, the people that were here before the Hohokam, they were also farmers. And when we were doing the farm rehabilitation, they found some canals in the fields. So they were also like farmers. And the people here used the water in the river in olden times, and they would also dammed up the river and then put a canal which brought the water to the fields. And the early farmers here, they planted like wheat, beans, corn, squash, all those crops. And then I guess when Father Keno came, then he brought more other crops, I guess. And for the rest of the community, there were several like hand dug wells throughout the community for domestic use. And so as I said before, the Wakatam were farmers. And then one of the things at Xavier is that we're affected by the Allotment Act, which is federal legislation in 1887, I believe, or thereabouts, where they, I guess, in order to try and remedy the Indian problem and for the US government not to worry about the Indians, so they set forth this law, the Dawes Act or the Allotment Act, where they would give a certain amount of acreage to a family or single persons on a reservation for the purposes of farming, ranching, and timber for the tribes that have a lot of timber. And so in the earlier times, farmers here, they had family farms. And then in the 1920s or 30s, then the BIA constructed groundwater wells and a canal system to bring water to the farm. And most of the families farmed their allotments if they were close to the fertile areas, which is right along the Santa Cruz River. And so that's the way it was. And then in 1971, the Xavier Cooperative Association was formed because as the years went by, you know, the allotments were what they call fractionated, which means that say you were the owner of the allotment and then you passed away and then you have 5 children maybe, and the allotment got divided like 5 ways. And therefore it went down the line because they followed the state law for the probate. And, you know, the Indians didn't write wills to say, you know, I give my allotment to my oldest son. So that's why, so now we have these allotments here that are fractionated with, sometimes we have as many as like maybe 200 people in each of those allotments. And to go back to the Xavier Cooperative Association, in 1971, some of the landowners came together and formed the association as a state chartered corporation. And the purpose there was that they wanted to combine their lands for farming. And so that's how it started. And in 1981, it was chartered under the Tohono Nation. So it continued like that until about the 1960s when the water got depleted because the growth of Tucson, the use of groundwater by the mines south of us and the farmers south of us. And so after that time, the farming slowed down. And then in 1975, because of the depletion of the water, also, I kind of saw the end of when, you know, when they show the pictures of the Mesquite Bosques and Mr. Wilder talked about the cottonwood in the river. And when I was maybe about 9 or 10, we could still see some of the cottonwoods in the river. And the other thing during that time was that I think it was in September when I guess it was the dove hunting season. And so some of the hunters would come over there and we could hear them shooting their rifles for the birds in there. And after that time, you know, it totally got dry. There were no more mesquite trees, and the mesquite busks were gone. And also in 1983 and 1993, we had the 100-year flood, and it washed away some of the lands on the banks of the river. And then because of the depletion of the water, then the United States government, on behalf of the Tohono, or well, at that time they were called the Papua tribe, and some of the landowners filed a lawsuit against the city of Tucson, Farmers Investment Company, ASARCO, and the other major water pumpers in the Tucson area because they have depleted the Xavier aquifer. And in Indian law, I guess it says that if you're there first, you have the first rights to the water. And so then the case was called United States versus Tucson et al. And it never went to trial because the defendants and the tribe thought maybe it'd be better if it was settled out of court. And so they met together and negotiated the settlement, which became called the Southern Arizona Water Right Settlement Act of 1982, and was passed in the Congress. And this settlement gave Central Arizona Project water to Xavier in the amount of 50,000 acre feet. And the other district that was included in the settlement was the Eastern Chukduak district, which is there by Sandaria Road, because they wanted to include that because they were part of the Tucson Active Management Area, you know, the groundwater system established by state law. And so they included them, and their allocation is 16,000 acre feet. And the other benefits of SWARSA is that the Xavier Cooperative Farm would be rehabilitated, because then they could bring the CP water to the co-op and irrigate the fields. And so that was done it was finally completed in 2007, because prior to that time, although the act was passed in 1982, the nation hired this engineering firm, but they did not, and then they fired them, and then the work just stopped. And then meanwhile, over here, we started to farm because at the time, Clifford Pablo was the manager. And he said, in anticipation of the CP water, maybe we should start farming. And we did rehabilitate some groundwater wells, and started I think with 1 acre, an acre and a half of, autumn squash. And so like I said, they were supposed to finish the planning and design of the rehabilitation of the farm, which was around 1,000 acres, which that's the amount of land or allotted land that we leased from the landowners to do the farming. And so that never happened. The work came to a stop. And then meanwhile, there were sinkholes that were developing in the farm area. And Clifford Pablo had mapped those sinkholes, because that would be a hindrance to rehabilitation of the farm. And then I think it was a chairman, Austin Nunes, Clifford, and myself, we went to see Senator McCain's office in DC. We talked to one of his assistants, and we told them, the nation's not moving forth on the rehabilitation, and we have these sinkholes, and the bank has been washed away by this, the floods. And so then his name was Michael Jackson. And so Mr. Jackson came down here and saw the sinkholes and the erosion of the banks. And then he, I guess through Senator McCain's office, then they directed the Bureau of Reclamation to begin the farm rehabilitation, because the Bureau of Reclamation is the lead agency under the SWRSA. So like I said, it was completed finally in 2007. And then this map shows where the Central Arizona Project line comes in. There's the Black Mountains over here at Xavier, and then it enters the reservation and goes straight down, kind of angles out, and then there's like what they call regulating reservoir, and then it continues all the way to Pima Mine Road and I-19. And Pima Mine Road is the boundary of the Xavier Reservation, and that's why we have a SARCO, you know, the mine, because the SARCO has an on-reservation mine, and then it has an off-reservation mine. So the Pima Mine Road is the border. And the other benefits was that a trust fund was given to the nation for water development and repair and replacement of the facilities that are not the responsibility of the government. And the other thing that happened, because in about the 1992 or 3, I think the city of Tucson and some of the other defendants were not maybe satisfied with SWRSA of 1982. And so then they were interested in meeting back with, you know, the nation and the Alatis about trying to amend SWRSA. Because in SWRSA, the uses of the CP water were for mining and industrial uses and agricultural uses. And then I think the Xavier district and the Alatis wanted to expand those uses to include like recharge and maybe restoring the flows in the river, and to do riparian restoration. Because when we were talking about amending SWRSA, we met with the landowners and the elders, and then we talk about how it used to be with the farming, that they grew these farm crops and they were a healthier people. And as we know today, you know, there is a lot of diabetes, you know, with the autumn. And also they said, you know, they talked about the trees, you know, the cottonwood trees and the mesquite trees in the river or surrounding the river. So that's why we included the repair and restoration, maybe restoring the flows in this, what we call the core concepts. And that's what we went to the negotiating table with the rest of the defendants. And we also had some issues with the nation, because they were saying, well, you don't have a right to that water. It belongs to the nation, because under the 1986 Constitution, where it relates to water policy, it states that, you know, all waters that flow through the nation are under the control and management of the nation. But then they don't read in the next phrase that says consistent with federal law. And that means because when the allotments were given, the water rights were attached to those allotments, because without the water, you can't ranch or farm or do timber. So we had a big conflict with the nation over that issue. But as I stated before, that's when we developed those core concepts. And because we said, well, we shouldn't talk about water rights. We should talk about what improvements we want to make to SWRSA. And that's why we came up with the core concept, which I just mentioned. and the other was to request an economic development fund that was comparable to what the nation had already gotten under their trust fund. So that's the way that SWRSA developed, and then it was passed in 2004. And it also, and to go back, I guess, to the replenishment of the Santa Cruz River, and I think it was due to the fact that because of the irrigation, I guess, on the farm that Gabriel's going to talk about, and that we also have the settlement agreement with ASARCO, because ASARCO had groundwater wells and to use for the processing of the ore at the mine. So under SWRSA, there is this agreement with SWRSA that cap water will be leased to them for their Indian ore, or not, well, they process both what they call Indian ore and off-reservation ore for all the ores that they would use this CEP water to do that. So they're not using groundwater anymore. And that the Santa Barbara District did do a recharge program also. And I know the first time they did it, they ran the water in one of the washes south of like Black Mountain. And then after that time, the hydrologists at the district then studied the areas where there would be the recharge sites. You have to, I guess, look at the soil to see if it, penetrates or it's not sandy or whatever. So he has, the hydrologist had identified certain areas of the reservation where you could do that recharge. And so I think that's on hold because, again, the issue would be, as I said, most of the Xavier lands are allotted, and you'd have to either lease the land or, maybe purchase lands from the allottees to do the recharge. So I think I've kind of covered everything, Then I guess I would turn over to Gabriel.
Yes, Julie, thank you. We could keep listening to you for a lot longer, though, if you wanted to. That was fantastic. Yeah, Gabriel, go for it.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Anna and Ben, for hosting this incredible lecture series. I'm looking forward to the other topics throughout this winter. I would like to start off with acknowledging that the Santa Cruz River that once, flowed through this area, such a majestic river, had people that tended to it, that cared for it. There was indigenous communities here for thousands of years that were the original land keepers. And it's important to acknowledge that these lands that, we currently reside in Tucson, were once cared for. And so in the area where we are now, those original land managers were O'odham and Yaqui. So I just wanted to start off with that it's important to acknowledge that those land stewards were here for a long time before the colonists came, and it's only been since Arizona became a state that the demise of the Santa Cruz River came about. So, I recall, and like I said, 100 years isn't a lot. The O'odham have been farming this area for over 4,000 years. So if you put that in perspective, you know, it goes to show that that there were these land stewards, the river stewards that took care of this area, and it belongs to them. And so when we have these conversations, when we have these collaborations and these connections, it's important to establish those connections. So 100 years hasn't been very long. I remember my grandmother, who's still with us, she's 92. She tells me about when when it was a perennial, we had perennial flow within the river. So, like I said, thank you all for being here. I look forward to presenting. I'm a little bit all over the place just because, you know, here at the farm, we're doing a lot right now. And so these presentations don't get my full attention. So please bear with me. This map shows the greater Tucson area. You can see the farm there. And you can kind of see the Santa Cruz to the right side of our farm fields. So that's just to put things in perspective. It's also important to, you know, if I can retract and just all the land that that you see there, and you know, outside of this map, you know, they all have. All the landscapes have autumn names. They have autumn words. They have meanings, and you know, it's full of medicine and ceremony and resources that have that were looked after for millennia. So we currently have 9,000, excuse me, we have roughly around 900. Acres, farmable acres. Our main crop is alfalfa. We're looking into developing ways to, you know, bring revenues with transitioning into traditional crops. You know, that's our passion. That's why we're here. That's why we're here, you know, 24/7, is to revitalize these foods that were grown in this region for such a long time, that were domesticated in this area. As I mentioned, we grow mostly hay products, alfalfa. We grow some wheat as well. And we grow traditional crops. We have a small orchard. We're hoping to expand with heritage fruit trees. So that's where we are with that. So there's this rematriation, right? This bringing back, this reclaiming, this returning of the foods, or that the community wishes for. This is something that this is our goal. This is our mission: is to revitalize these foods and revitalize the river, revitalize the traditions, the culture. The ceremonies. So the rematriation is a reclaiming of all these things I just mentioned. When the river ran dry, one of the things the elders had hoped for was to be able to see a return of the river, and a return of the agricultural use of the lands. So we have, you know, we're there. And so maybe, you know, we, as Julie mentioned, you know, there is a return of the river, and this community has been farming for 4,000 years in this area, because of the Santa Cruz. So we are learning from our elders. We are taking their blessings and moving forward with their teachings, and we wish to fulfill their wishes, and we're striving, working quite hard to return the river and return these foods. So with that, there's this knowledge that I've mentioned. There's the keepers of these lands, have passed on this. There's this term, this traditional ecological knowledge, right? So with that, we are hoping what the farm is doing is, we're incorporating these teachings as much as we can. And here you have photos of the youth, right? And they're learning how to pick chodum, choyaba, out on the land. And also you have some youth picking the Baya Dutch, the saguaro fruit, and there's some others frolicking within our orchard. So this concept of learning from the past and taking care of the land and taking care of the water is deeply embedded in this farm. We are fortunate enough to have water, and so we'll get into the technical aspects on how we irrigate, but I just wanted to go over these other concepts that are important to understand, because I guess it's a background, but it's also what we're doing to move forward, and it all ties in with bringing restoring the rematriation of the river. So part of that, let me back up. So in this dish here, we have tepary beans, and we have the chodum, the choya buds that I just mentioned. So these are foods that have been cooked here in this area for a very, very long time. So we're continuing it. We offer these foods here, and I like to say that food is medicine, and when you eat something like this, you'll understand what I'm saying. So the way our methods of farming, we take into consideration the whole ecosystem. We take into consideration everything. We don't add any synthetic inputs. We do not use pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, because we know those are going to impact the ecosystem. So if we spray any glyphosate, any Roundup, those not only harm the intended target plants, but they also harm the invertebrates, the insects, but it also can leach into the groundwater. So we flood irrigate here, and that's something that I'll talk to you soon. So with the rematriation of the river and bringing and raising the water table, we don't want the future generations, right? I mean, and that's another thing that we're doing. We're doing this for the several generations ahead of us. So with climate change, we'll understand that we can, in the future, and the way things are going now, it seems like it's going to be in the near future rather than several generations down the road. But if, for instance, we have these continued droughts, these prolonged droughts, we will definitely be limited to our access to CAP water. And so, as many of you know, the Central Arizona Project is water that's diverted from the Colorado River and brought to the farm. And so, lost my train of thought, but it's okay. We'll just keep going. So, anyhow, these images just show that our practices, our agricultural practices, are to look at the whole picture, to look at future generations, the recharging that we do because of the flooding, and the collaborative efforts of the San Javier district is so that if we do have droughts in the future and we do not have access to CAP, that's where I was going, then we'll have water here because of the recharging of the aquifers. So these drought tolerant autumn foods can continue to grow, and although we'll have to pump it, the resiliency and the effort to continue to grow these crops and to continue to feed the community will still be here. So, and there's some more really interesting flora and fauna that are here on the ranch the farm that you would never, that you don't see in the city, that's for sure. And, we're so close. I mean, we are practically in Tucson. So, just to see that because of our farming methods, we incorporate the ecosystem, which we don't harm. So, as I mentioned, we do flood irrigate. We do, and I know there's many people out there that are opposed to flood irrigating, especially in the desert, right? There's a high evaporation rate because, especially in the desert, because of the sun is so intense. And so, it can be considered a waste of water. However, we don't look at it that way because, as I mentioned, we are recharging the aquifer. So the more we flood irrigate, the more we give rise to the water table. And we in these photos, you can see the center photo. We have these alfalfa valves, which you'll see soon, and every once in a while, the top of the valve will pop off, and so that's what happened here. And you can see the volume of water that's coming through this area. So when we flood irrigate, we can flood irrigate. We can flood irrigate with a flow of 20 up to 23 CFS, so cubic feet per second. So that translates to, I think it's like 172 gallons per second. it's a lot of water that we're fortunate enough to irrigate our crops with. And again, this is all with a purpose. This is all for intention. This is all intention. This is all for the children in later generations, so they can have the same access. And hopefully, you know, things that don't turn out as bad as projections are being predicted. So, you know, maybe we can bring the river to a full flow like it once did. So these children can play in the river. This is why we do it. This is what we're doing. Here you can see we have 5 irrigation vaults. So this was all engineered by the Bureau of Reclamation. And in my opinion, it's a bit overboard. But you can see that this irrigation vault, 1 of 5, this is the first one. So the water comes into this vault, which is underground, and just so you can get an idea of what this looks like. So it's really loud. And, you know, there's times when we're irrigating overnight and we get a call from CAP that we're having an issue and we have to crawl in these vaults in the middle of night and fix whatever issues we're having. But it for the most part, you know, it works. It's been working since 2007. And so, you know, general maintenance is an issue, but it's not too bad. And here's an alfalfa riser. And so a half a turn is 1 CFS. And so we're able to calculate how much water we're using and how much we need to put into a field. So so that's a couple of years ago, we planted some white Sonora wheat and some other grains right behind the mission. And I think you should have seen photos earlier of the contrast between the horses breaking up the grains and the threshing, and then I believe that was done in the 20s or so, and then to now where we are fortunate enough to use machinery, and basically those machines clean it and it's ready to go straight from the machine. So these this is how we irrigate for the most part. This is what we do. This is how we farm, and we do it with intention. And this year. Our food production staff is doing an amazing job, and this is our 60-day corn that we grew this year. We grew approximately 10 acres of it, and it is going to be processed. It's being processed into a traditional autumn food called gyoza, and it's roasted corn, and it's, you know, milled almost into a corn meal. And so it's a 60-day corn because from seed to harvest, it takes approximately 2 months. You know, these desert adapted crops, you know, were important. You know, that's how autumn lived for thousands of years. So, you know, they were able to grow that in other drier communities, throughout the nation, because they would farm with the rain, right? And so the walk community was fortunate enough to have the river where they were able to channel the water flow into fields. So here's another photo of the corn that's coming up. And we're running pretty late, so let me, and that's the corn there. And so there's that. And so the river, right? It's flowing again. And here's this perennial flow that's that I took, and it's only been within the last couple of years where you can see this flow. And so that bridge is the I-19, and I'm standing on the Mission, or the Xavier Road bridge. And so the source of the water coming from a spring lake is not too far on the other side of that. And so within the past few months, this stream has kind of retracted, probably due because we had a very dry summer. But this is why we're here, and this is what we're doing. And our future is looking something like this. We are planning on expanding 1,000 acres into center pivots, you know, and this is what it would look like, and it's along the river. The little blue line on the left there, under Martinez Hill, where those other photos were taken, and that's where this perennial creek is coming out with the efforts of the farm and the Santa Fe district, their recharge program, and their HICDON, which is, you can see the under Martinez Hill, the riparian area 1, that's the walk HICDON, and that's a riparian area that they've been taking care of for a few years now. So there's huge cottonwood trees there. When you're driving by I-19, you can easily miss it, but it's pretty obvious. You know, so with everything going on with the climate change, with everything that's going on in indigenous communities, as far as the colonists continuing to try to extract, exploit, and expand, you know, it's important that you support these communities, because they're the ones that are trying to protect the water. They're the ones that are trying to protect the rivers. And so with that, thank you all. You know, I had so much to say, but I think we're running out of time. So thank you all, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Gabriel, that was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you both, Julie and you, Gabriel. That was so informative and very inspirational. I mean, those plans for the future, that's really exciting. So let's get into some questions and answers. Julie, feel free to go ahead and turn your video back on and unmute yourself. Maybe the kickoff question, and just to kind of time-wise for you all, just everyone's wondering, we had scheduled this to about 7:30 on the late end, so we're not in a rush to end by 7 or anything, but we'll probably aim to wrap up by 7:15, if not a little before. We'll just see where the conversation goes. So, but I understand if you haven't gone to dinner yet, you may need to head off early, and that's fine. But let's keep talking a little while longer. We don't have to rush anything here. So, Gabriel, do you have any numbers of the aquifer recharge in terms of where you started at 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or whatever point you want to use, and where you're at now?
Yeah, so I don't have the as far as I know, and maybe Julie knows, as far before we started, where the water table was at, but I do know so the Santa Fe district has put in piezometers. I believe there's 7 piezometers within the farm, and piezometers are basically boreholes, and the piezometers measure the elevation of the water table. So there are areas, I think there are 3 of the 4 piezometers are measuring water at the lowest is 28 feet, and the to 30 feet. So it's you could dig that. So it's incredible. That's definitely a root zone for the mesquites, and definitely for, as well as the conwoods. So that's what I know.
Julie, do you know where that water level was 2030 or some point in the past?
No, I'm not a hydrologist, I guess.
All right. Julie, a question for you. Are the Sonoran, this is from Jerome, are the Sonoran members of the Tanatam Nation incorporated in discussions of water use and land use?
The Autumn in Mexico? Yeah. Well, at this point, some of them, the only thing I know is that some of the Autumn in Mexico are enrolled in the nation, and they still have villages, south of the border. But I think that they're kind of like maybe being diminished. But there is a group, I guess you say, like they have like a governor. I know that much, that they do have. So they do have a group of people from those villages. But a lot of times the people that live like on the main reservation, they're also go back and forth to the communities in Mexico. So, and then the Autumn in Mexico are, if they're enrolled members, then they're eligible for like health care, like at cells. But I think a long time ago, we had this Border Tribes Conference here. We had some of the people from those villages, I think in the early 90s. And that time, I guess they were having a hard time getting across the border. And, but I don't know if at this time, they are still having those issues.
Okay. Another question for you, Julie. This is from Trika. So she wonders, does the nation still have a voice in CAP allocations, especially given changes in allocations and the recent attempt by Utah to build a new canal and channel the Colorado River to Colorado City, Utah? So yeah, I guess the question is, at the higher level, is the nation involved in this kind of general allocations of the river, big scale?
Right. Well, they had the meetings with the drought contingency plan of the CP water, I think it was last year. So they have some of the tribes that are getting CP water from, they were there also on, like, I think it was Gila River. They had to store some of their water in Lake Mead to keep the levels at, 1075, before then it, goes into the shortage years, that's when they have to start cutting the people, the groups that, get CEP water. And in the CEP system, there's these different levels, like municipal, industrial, then we have the agriculture, and then we have the non-Indian agriculture, and so forth. So I think the drought contingency plan that they put together will only go to, I think, 2026. And I think now they're meeting to discuss, I guess, what will happen after 2026. But the tribes are part of those meetings,
Thanks. Gabriel, maybe a couple questions that are kind of related. So first, is it possible to visit the farm, and how did that work if people wanted to come out there?
Yeah, of course. We're dealing with COVID times, of course. So, our store is open. So people, the public, and that's one thing that people don't really realize. That people, I hear it so often that, like, oh, I didn't realize I was open to the public. When there's an open to the public sign on the front. But anyhow, a lot of people don't realize that, people are more than welcome to come visit. People can call and schedule a tour. We would practice CDC guidelines, of course. We're also have opportunities for people to volunteer if they would like to do that as well. As I said, during these times, there's certain guidelines we need to follow, but absolutely people are welcome to come.
What's the best way for them to find out more information in terms of volunteering or where the store is? Is it at the website?
Yeah, so we're actually in the middle of rebuilding and starting a new website, but people can still go to our website. People can call 520-295-3774 or our website, sanjaviercoop.org. But people can call and talk to me, and we kind of just go on a case-by-case basis on what people are looking for. But we have an excellent crew, an excellent staff that work very hard, and they are open to all of these things.
Say that number one more time, and then
Yeah, 520-295-3774.
And I'll also mention your Instagram. The farms are great. You guys have a great Instagram account, the San Javier Co-op Farm. Another question kind of related, but maybe a little more specific for you, Gabriel, is what traditional crops are you growing now, or do you also intend to dig into more, grow more in the future?
Yeah, so currently as those photos showed, we had the 60-day corn, and we also grow the autumn hod, which is it's a cushaw type squash that stays well. There's also a autumn yellow meated watermelon. There's a curibosho, which is curibosho means old man's chest because it's really wrinkly, and apparently it looks like an old man's chest. I haven't gotten there yet, but but we're in a transition phase right now. So we're getting ready, and our main crop is the tepary bean, and we have a red and a white tepary bean, and we're in the getting ready to harvest our beans within the next few weeks. And so those are some of the crops we do. Like I said, we're transitioning, and we're going to start focusing on our fall crops, and we're gonna keep it minimal this year, and we're going to just focus on the autumn pea.
Wow, that all sounds great.
And autumn pea and the iitoy onion, which is a sort of a bunching onion as well.
Yeah, I'm ready for some of that. Julie, question from Lynn Lovelace. Where does the water come from that now maintains the flow in the Santa Cruz in the San Javier area? Is it CAP water, or is there groundwater pumping on site that's being released into the stream? Or is it reclaimed water, or a combination of local runoff, or a mix of the above?
No, I think it's because the water levels are rising. And, because I'm understanding that the Martinez Hill and the Black Mountain, they have a fault that connects both of them. And that's why maybe the water table was up high, and that's why it flowed into the stream. So as I said before, the other thing that I forgot to mention is the other recharge site that affects Santa Javier is the City of Tucson and the Central Arizona Water District. They have recharge basins on Pima Mine Road. It's like east of the casino. And then the water flows north. So I think maybe we're getting some of that water also, but they're recharging the CAP water there also.
And this is a question from my mother, Rebecca Wild, actually. So in either of you please answer, what is the autumn name for the Santa Cruz River? Or is there such a name for what we call the Santa Cruz River?
Well, in autumn it's called Hickton, which means like I guess you could say it's like a cutting. It's a cutting. Because I think the other word for like river is like Akimut. Because like, you know, that's what the Gila people call themselves. They call themselves the Akimut Autumn because of the Gila River. But here, you know, when I was growing up and even now, it was called the Hickton. So it's like a cutting, I guess, in the land. And like Gabriel mentioned, the riparian site that south of us here also, that's what it's called, Hickton Park. And it uses safety water. It has a little stream, and then it has all these plants. And when they first started planting that, the riparian site, there was hardly any trees there. I think there was just one cottonwood tree. And now it's all surrounded by, you know, cottonwood trees and screw bean, mesquite, and all these other plants, you know. And it's pretty cool down there in the summertime, you know.
Is it kind of related to the ability to visit the farm? How is it possible to visit the Hickton restoration area?
Well, how would they get there?
Yeah, is that something that's someone, I mean, either
Right.
in normal or COVID times, that's something we need, people would, imagine it's closed now, but if
Right.
things improve, is that something that people would make a reservation for to visit or?
Yeah, yeah, it's open to the autumn, but like I think you can have visitors, but you can have to go through the district because they're the people that operate it, you know.
Yeah, so you'd have to contact the Santa Xavier district, and their number is 573-4000.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that people just can't just go there. You need to have that clear. I guess either of you can answer this question from Ameth. So he asks, can you guys describe the nature of the walk in the sense that the water, I know, went down back into the ground and then returned further upstream? He further says, at least from my understanding, is there another example like this in the region that you guys know that you use that's analogous to this phenomena, essentially with the water going under and then resurfacing later?
Mm. You mean in the Santa Cruz area or on the other reservations? Or?
Yeah, I think it can be more broadly.
Yeah, because when I talked about the three groups of autumn, the riverine, which would be the Santa Xavier people, and then the second group was the two village people. That's more like in the area of, you know, where San Pedro is and Cirenaica. There, they had a winter village and a summer village. So the winter village was usually by the mountain because that's where the water was. And then in the summertime, they had a summer village. That's where they planted their crops. Because when you get the monsoons that flow through the washes, then they diverted the you know, rainwater into their fields, and that kind of farming is called the auction farming, meaning like it's the mouth of, you know, the wash. So that's what the two village people do. And then the third group is the hunters and gatherers, which are like further west, like in the area of Guwa, on the western part of the reservation, because they're also close to Puerto Penasco, and they did their like salt pilgrimages and I guess the fishing or whatever they did. So that's why there were really like three groups of autumn, depending upon where they lived, you know, and what existed there, you know.
Thank you. So this is a comment from Muffin. She says, thank you, Gabe and Julie, for your work and for your presentations. Will there be any traditional style waffle gardens experimentally planted at San Javier to simulate Puhugam farm styles? We're wondering if that waffle farm style could better conserve water.
Yeah, that's a good question, Muffin. As at the moment, we don't have any plans of developing any type of waffle gardens. But I know people that do that in their backyard and have great success with it. So, maybe that's something we can consider in our community garden.
I have to ask a question of the question there. Can you describe what waffle gardens are and how that works?
Yeah, so waffle gardens are dug out soil, and it sort of mimics, it looks like a waffle. And so you can plant crops, and when it rains, it, puddles into this waffle and into each, cell of the waffle. And um, and when it's not raining, you can just kind of fill up each waffle, and it sort of utilizes more of the water for the crop.
And can you scale the size of the waffles
uh,
for what you're planting, I guess? Or?
yeah, I know they vary, but I would say maybe like 2 foot by 2 foot, and there's variations of that.
Thank you. All right, a question for Julie. Is the recharging of the river by a spring? We may have already answered this, but I'll just read it anyway. So is the recharging of the river by a spring? You mentioned that all related. I can't make out what this is trying to say. Okay, let me just get to the best part of this question. Are you in the city cooperating with plans for the river?
I don't think so. You probably have to ask that of the chairman. Well, because the only issue out of Swarsa is because one of the other agreements that was made with the city of Tucson was that they put aside a fund for the district for the repair of the sinkholes that occur on the reservation. And so it was I can't remember what the amount was, but that was one of the agreements with the city to provide that funding to repair the sinkholes.
Could you, when you say SWARSA, do you mind just repeating or saying what the acronym stands for again?
Mm-hmm. The Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act.
And that was the act that was passed for the nation to give the rights and access to the Central Arizona Water Project water. And so because of that act, we are able to farm, and the nation is, receives water as well.
Maybe on the that, Gabriel, when Julie talked about the relation and the fraught relations at point between the nation and the San Javier district, Dwayne and I think several of us are wondering, what is the current relationship between the San Javier district and the Donata Nation in regards to water issues? Not to try to get anyone in trouble here.
That's a sensitive subject, but I'll let Julie share with whatever she would like to share.
Yeah, because when we were negotiating 1982 SWARSA, we felt that the nation, because the cap reach 6 does not go close to the nation except for eastern Shukduak. And so I think what their intent was that maybe they would sell the water, because 1982 SWARSA provided that they could share, they could lease or sell the water. And so I think that was their objective in what they were going to do with the CAP water. But here at San Javier, we wanted, some people have said, the wet water, because we wanted to do these things. We want to do farming, we want to do recharge, we want to do a repair and restoration. So even now, there's this other thing called the storage credits from the cap water. And because we only use, I think, about 10,000 acre feet of the allocation, and then the remainder is left to the nation, and that's what they're doing, is they're storing the water to earn these credits, because in the Arizona law you can sell those credits, to what should I say, to be allocated to like developments that need 100 years worth of water. And so that's what they have been doing. And but I think there's supposed to be a discussion about, so if they sell the water or lease the water, then at least Xavier should share in some of the funds they get from selling the credits.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Next, maybe Gabriel, question from Elizabeth Anton. What is the most challenging part of sustaining farming efforts? The capital, water, and then she just also says, keep up the great work.
Thank you, Ms. Antone. So one of our greatest challenges would be controlling the plants that are not desirable, and I guess, they're weeds to some, but they have their purposes, right? So because we don't spray, we don't use any herbicides, some of our hay products can have undesirable plants, and so are really picky horse owners don't like it. But on the flip side of it is, they're getting a diverse meal, and also, they're not getting any herbicides or pesticide residues in their feed. So and that's why a lot of people prefer coming to us, is because we don't spray, and we are organic, although we're not certified. I like to say we're beyond organic, but one of our issues is controlling the weeds, and a lot of our food crop fields could become overrun by weeds and drown out the vegetables. And so that I would say that's one of our greatest challenges.
As a follow-up wearing my botanist hat here, has there been so I've been reading this book that's by Catherine Mouse. It's called An Agreeable Land, and it's kind of a historical flora of the Santa Cruz River in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's a documentation through herbarium records primarily of what the beyond just the cottonwoods and the gallery forest, but the full host of species that were here when it was a healthy riparian ecosystem. Where I'm going towards is, has there been maybe I'm making work for myself here, but has there been an inventory of the flora that's been coming up in your fields in the last several years?
There hasn't been one designated to flora, but I would love, because that's something, I know grasses are very difficult to identify, and that's something that I just don't have time for. So if you know anybody that can do that, that would be great, because I'd love to identify a lot of the flora we have here and the plants. One thing that I did have, and it, I just learned that Dr. Rosen had just passed, because when I first came, I was really interested in the fauna, the animals and the insects, the herps that were on the farm, because it was so diverse. I was just amazed at seeing all these different animals in such a small area. And so I invited him to come to the farm and make a catalog for us. And I was just thinking about him the other day, because unfortunately we didn't receive that list. condolences. Like I said, I just learned of his passing tonight. But yeah, if you are interested, I would love to collaborate with you so we could identify a lot of these different plants.
It's fascinating. It's amazing to see what comes back when you add water, right? So, yeah. I think maybe the last question we can end on, and this is a really interesting one from Lisa Shippick. Hey, Lisa, is that are there, and this is for either of you, are there plans for additional Mesquite Bosque restoration areas through the farm or otherwise?
Yeah, so part of the rehabilitation, the bringing back of the farm, the current farm that we have now, that was rebuilt, so to speak. There in that plan, there was a mitigation plan to plant. There's a map here. I believe it's about 40 acres of mesquite. And so what we've been doing within the last couple of years is we have been planting seedlings, and and those will eventually be planted throughout the farm as well. And with our extension area on the other side of I-910 along the river, there's also going to be a mitigation plan where we have to plant X amount of native trees, mostly mesquite.
Very cool. And lots of opportunity for harvesting there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you both so much for your time and your knowledge and your efforts. Man, it's a remarkable thing what you all have accomplished, and just the scale of it. I think a lot of us here in Tucson don't recognize, and it's just so inspirational, so impressive. So thank you very much for everything you do and sharing this with us all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for joining us. Now, and make sure to join us, and you have to register again for our next lecture, which is going to be October 14th, same place, same time. And we are going to be hearing from Dr. Bob Webb, emeritus with the USGS, and a real scholar on kind of the changes from a scientific perspective of the river through the last centuries and more leading up to today. So you all have a wonderful week, and be well till we connect next time. Thank you all so much.